Hey guys, so I really want to address those times in our lives in which we feel like we're in deep and difficult emotional pain, and we just really want to get out of it and reach a state of inner peace and calm and to think positively and constructively. And everybody really wants to be able to do this when they're in a lot of pain within themselves. So I'm going to tell you how you could be able to work your way up to be able to climb up to a greater state of inner peace within yourself, but it's not in a way that people typically expect. So often people expect to get out of a negative state, almost like flipping a light switch, that they could suddenly turn it on and be able to think a lot more effectively and positively if only that they try it, only they put effort into it. But they find a lot of internal resistance within that makes it difficult for them to be able to make that change. So I want to introduce here a different approach that is step by step, that's able to release that resistance inside so that you'll be able to feel better. So here in this video, I'm going to give you 5 steps you could take to go from a state of deep emotional pain to a state of inner peace. And what I want to tell you here is that it's important not to skip any of these steps and to be able to genuinely process one step at a time, thoroughly process one of these steps at a time before you move on to the next step here. So number 1 step is to actually allow for your own pain and make room for it. So this seems kind of ironic or counterproductive, but it works. So what I find myself doing is that I try to force my thoughts to be different. I force my emotions to be different, but often that does not work. Sometimes it does work, but other times it does not work. And when I try to resist my negative state within, it only gets stickier. And what I find is that when I actually allow for my own pain and make room for it, that resistance goes away and makes it easier to start to make changes to my thoughts. But first of all, allow for your own pain. It doesn't mean that you make it more than what it is. So people think that if I allow my own pain, I'm enabling it in some sort of way. You don't have to make that emotion more than it is. You're feeling that anger, feel that anger, but you don't have to make it more. Or if it's sadness, you don't have to make it more than what it is. But you also don't want to make it less than what it is to minimize that emotion, because that is resisting it. And that only makes it stickier within. Allow for what is felt within yourself. At this stage, it's not about giving yourself solutions or trying to force yourself to think differently. When you do so, it actually makes it harder later on to try to change your thoughts. So just allow for that pain to be there. Because when you allow for that pain, you're actually naturally not judging it because you're bearing witness to that pain within. Now we're on to step 2. So it's important to process step 1 first, genuinely and thoroughly before getting to step 2. So step 2 is validating your pain and even your desire to escape from your inner emotional pain. Here, you give voice to what you're feeling inside, your emotions, even stigmatized emotions like sadness and anger. And when you do so, you are destigmatizing these emotions. And by destigmatizing these emotions, you're causing them to be less sticky because when they feel heard, they're no longer going to try to resist you. What's important to note here is that this is not simply about trying to process these emotions just so that you could get them out of the way so you could do the real work and think positive and think constructively. Part of the actual work is to be able to work with your emotions, because when you can empathize with your emotions and see where they're actually coming from, you could really genuinely understand the value in emotions that you're experiencing within. Now we're on to step number 3. So step number 3 is get in touch with the ways that you are able to cope and be able to provide self-care. So maybe there's ways you already know how to cope, that you already know how to provide self-care. Be able to access that. Sometimes we try to rush and try to create new solutions for ourselves, but there's already ways that we know that are beneficial for us, that's healing for us. Engage in those methods. Also, try to think about ways that you've made progress in your life, even in small ways, or in different areas of your life, what are some small ways that you have made gains? Often we're so focused on where we need to go, what we need to do in order to improve, that what ends up happening then is that we end up focusing on a gap between where we are and where we should be. And then that makes us feel hopeless and not actually give us the motivation to go on. Now we're on to the fourth step here, which is to be able to understand the situation in broader terms outside of our own perspective. So often we try to rush into the step. We try to not do the previous steps, and we really want to force ourselves to see everything more objectively and broader and outside of our own perspective. The key thing here is that actually, if you process the previous steps first, it becomes much easier to do this step. I'll give you an example why that is the case. When you try to force yourself to have empathy for someone who has wronged you, it actually is really difficult. And sometimes we do that in order to make ourselves feel better, but it does not actually work that well. When we can first empathize with ourselves, it causes less resistance when we start to empathize with others. Plus, we're able to transfer that empathetic energy that we provide for ourselves onto others much more easily. So now we're on to the fifth and final step here, and that's to be able to see the learning opportunity in your pain, to be able to see your pain as a means to personal growth. What does this pain teach you about yourself and what you value and how you would like to treat other people? So there's this really great saying that the ways that we need to be healed in our lives is a way that we heal other people. In my case, for instance, I've experienced pretty severe social anxiety in my life. And because I was able to address my own social anxiety, I started to run social anxiety workshops. So from a space of really deep pain, in which I would never have seen the purpose of before, I'm able to turn that into something that is purposeful. So what is the opportunity behind your pain? And it's important to really genuinely process the steps before, one step at a time, not skipping any of them before you get to this step. Because often when we're in a rush, when we're desperate, we try to just get into this fifth step as fast as possible. And that ends up causing a lot of resistance, causing a lot of invalidation, and we end up feeling worse. So really try to take your time to process the previous steps first before getting into this one. And the fifth step is also trying to find the next small step ahead. What can I do that's constructive and positive to be able to address my situation here? Often we try to skip right to this, but it's important, again, to do the previous steps. So I want to let you know that if you want to learn more about how you could do this, how you could climb the 5 steps and the purpose behind it, I've written an article on it called The 5 Steps to Go from Inner Pain to Inner Peace. Be sure to check that out. I have a link to that article down below in the description box. Thank you so much for watching. And if you like this video, click like, and you could also subscribe as well.